Hello YouTube, and welcome back to another book review from me, your host, Logan Albright. Today I'm talking about the Soviet classic, The Master and Margarita. Now, as some of you may know, if you've been watching my channel, I majored in Russian in college, and I read a lot of Russian literature in college, and I famously didn't like any of it because I found it all very bleak and nihilistic and depressing, and it wasn't my cup of tea, and all my professors made fun of me for not liking it. But I'm currently experiencing something of a renaissance of enjoying Russian literature. I recently read Dead Souls by Mikhail Bulgakov, the only Russian author I ever liked, and I thought it was great. Really loved that book. And I've been wanting to read this book for a while because it's about the devil visiting Moscow, and I think that's interesting. I like stories about the devil. I always find them fun. Paradise Lost is one of my favorite books. I just love stuff like that. So I thought I would give it a shot, and I picked it up in this beautiful Penguin Classics Deluxe edition with this great cover art. Really nice, sumptuous paperback copy. I recommend it. I really liked it. It's got a lot of notes in the back that explain the cultural references and the things you're not getting. The translation is good. Lots of footnotes and things like that. So I really enjoyed this edition. And I quite liked The Master and Margarita because unlike a lot of Russian literature, which I don't like, it is not bleak, it is not nihilistic, it's not depressing. It's actually quite funny. It's more of a satire than anything else. This book was written in the 1940s, but it was not published until after the author's death in the 1960s, partially due to its criticisms of the Stalinist regime and how unpopular that was at the time, and how you weren't really allowed to criticize the Stalinist regime. But it did come out eventually, and there's a line in here where an author, the master who is an author, is saying that he burnt the manuscript to his book, and the devil says, "How ridiculous, manuscripts don't burn." And the line, "manuscripts don't burn," became somewhat famous in Russia, and it seems to have applied to Bulgakov himself, Mikhail Bulgakov, who wrote this book, because it did not burn. It was actually published 20 years after his death, and that's good for us because it's quite an enjoyable read. I think some of the satire is probably a little bit over my head because I don't live in Stalinist Russia, so I can't quite understand everything that he's going on about, but there are some notes to help you along with that. And I did find the book quite funny, and it's also a very bizarre book. It's really strange. There's just like a lot of surreal moments in it, and I quite enjoyed that too. The basic plot revolves around the devil who shows up in Moscow in the circle of the literary elite, disguised as a black magician from some foreign country, possibly Germany, and he puts on a show, like a magic show for all the people, and he basically is calling out all of the hypocrisy and sinfulness of the Russian people and making fun of them and causing a bunch of chaos to happen in the city and a lot of crazy things going on. It's a very chaotic book. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, and the devil is accompanied by his retinue of a demon, a sexy vampire lady, and a enormous black cat named Behemoth or Behemoth, who can talk and behave like a human and is very strange. And these people go around and basically just cause chaos. Now, the title, The Master and Margarita, refers to an author who has basically shut himself away from the world and has committed himself to an insane asylum, and has allegedly burned his manuscript, which is about Pontius Pilate and the death of Jesus. And Margarita is the woman that he's in love with and who is in love with him. It's a little bit weird because we don't meet Margarita until the second half of the book, so it doesn't seem like it's really about them, but it much more becomes about them in the last part of the book. The first part is all kind of setup of like setting the scene and setting these devilish characters showing up and how they interact with the world. And then the second half is more about them. And there's also this interweaving plot, which turns out to be the plot of the Master's novel about the death of Jesus and Pontius Pilate back in, the Jesus times, as they say. And that's, seems to be kind of coming out of nowhere at first, but then it kind of weaves into the narrative a little bit more later. And you see how these things connect. And that's really interesting too, because part of the critique I think Bulgakov has of Russian society at the time is how blatantly atheistic he is and the lack of spirituality. And so kind of hearkening back to the teachings of Jesus and the experience of Jesus being sacrificed is a way of kind of commenting and critiquing the atheist nature of the communist regime. It's just a really weird book. Like, a lot of crazy stuff happens. There's a lot of allusions to other works. There's clearly influence from Gogol and Dead Souls. The kind of humorous, satirical characteristics come from that. There's a lot of allusions to Faust. Margarita herself, her name is sort of a reference to the character of Gretchen in Faust, which I quite enjoyed. I think Faust is an interesting story as well. There's a lot of references to that. There's references to other works of Russian literature like Eugene Onegin and the works of Pushkin and operas, Tchaikovsky. There's a lot of musical allusions. A lot of the characters have names that are drawn from famous composers. So it helps to have kind of a general background of European culture, and particularly Russian culture, to read this, to get it. But again, the notes help with that in the back. But just kind of lots of crazy, zany references. And then there's lots of references to like folklore surrounding the devil and the witch's Sabbath. And there's a really strange part where the devil gives Margarita a flying ointment, which is, if you've read about the history of witchcraft, flying ointment was supposedly a thing that the witches used to help transport them on their brooms to the witch's Sabbath, where they would worship the devil. And that basically is reenacted here, where Margarita turns into a witch and flies around the city and goes to a party at the devil's house, and all these historical figures show up. Really bizarre, really surreal, really strange, but it's got a lot of humor injected into it, and it's quite fun. And so if you are interested in Russian literature, but you don't want to be brought down and depressed, this would be a good place to start, to kind of show you the sense of humor of the Russian people, which is not always something that people talk about and is brought up a lot. I did really like it, so I recommend it, and it has inspired me to want to read more great works of Russian literature. I have never read Crime and Punishment, for example. I have read The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky, and I thought that was pretty good, but I've never read Crime and Punishment, and that's one of the most famous works of Russian literature. So maybe I should read that next. Let me know in the comments if you think I should read Crime and Punishment or any other Russian works which you think I might enjoy. I did read War and Peace and a couple other Tolstoy books in college, and I did not enjoy them. Not a Tolstoy fan, but if you have any other recommendations, I'd be happy to hear them. And that's pretty much what I have to say about The Master and Margarita. I always thought it was a weird title. Like, I never understood it growing up when I would hear the title. I always thought, like, Margarita is like the drink. And I was like, The Master and Margarita, what's that about? But it makes a little more sense when you read it. So yeah, give me your recommendations for Russian novels in the comments. I like to read more classics, and I'm glad I finally read this, because it was a lot of fun, and I do like things that kind of have allusions to the devil as a fun kind of prankster deity, a prankster character. I think those are great. And that's what I thought. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel and click the bell for notifications. I'll be back again next week, next Wednesday, with yet another book review for your viewing pleasure, something different. You never know what it's going to be. It could be fiction, it could be nonfiction, it could be a novel, it could be short stories, it could be sci-fi, fantasy, literary fiction, crime fiction, it could be anything. But stop on by next week and you'll see what it is. Until then, thanks so much for watching. I've been your host, Logan Albright, and I will catch you next time.